Hey guys, what is up? It has been a hot minute or two since I've made a video. I'm glad to be back. Can't say I'll be making a ton more of these, but I've got a few more ideas for videos I'd like to make. Let's start here. I've made videos in the past about why people don't like invasions. It's basically about people don't like losing. They don't like the loss of status associated with losing. People are consumed by status. Decisions about status, motivations about status govern so much of our lives and what we do. It's often kind of the hidden motivator, and I'll link to my previous video about this. I don't intend to get into the weeds about this too much. I was forced to think about this because of a tweet from Scott Young, which I'll share here. I want everybody to see it, and I address kind of this concern in this video that I'm linking to. So I'm not going to go into detail about this, but I realized maybe about a year ago that my explanation isn't quite enough, in the sense that my explanation explains why people don't like invasions, but what it doesn't explain is why people get so angry about it. For example, if you go and try to have a civil discussion on Reddit with somebody about why they don't like invasions or how invasions are actually just a game mechanic, you'll know people get very angry. They don't seem to think very clearly about this. And there's another part of this puzzle that I've long thought about. I've tried to understand. I had an epiphany about a year ago. I felt like I finally really understood what was going on, and now I'm here today, and I'd like to share with you what I've discovered. So before we go any further, a couple housekeeping notes. One, this video is going to be pretty nerdy. I know a lot of my videos are nerdy, but this one in particular is probably more nerdy than most, so you've been warned. The second warning is a bit more serious. In the sense that this topic is actually going to deal with intimate relations between siblings. And if that is the sort of topic that you find triggering or upsetting, you've been warned now. You should click off the video. For the rest of you, you're probably wondering, what on earth does any of this have to do with Elden Ring and Dark Souls 3 invasions? Well, for the rest of you, stick around and I'm about to explain. Okay, so we need to go back to the year 2001. And in the year 2001, a psychologist by the name of Jonathan Haidt conducted a pretty famous psychology experiment. And I'm going to replicate this experiment with you guys. I'm going to explain what the experiment was. I'm going to ask you some questions. And the key here is that you really need to think about these questions for yourselves. I'm going to ask you a moral question. You need to think about the question, you need to think about what your answer would be, and most importantly, why that's your answer. And believe me, you'll get a lot more out of this video if you take a minute or so and just think about it after I tell you what the question is. We'll get to the question here in just a moment, and then we'll talk about what that means for the experiment, and then we'll go and we'll tie this all back into invasions. All right, so here's the thought experiment. I want you guys to listen and think carefully about this. This is sort of a hypothetical. So Julie and Mark are brother and sister. They are traveling together in France on summer vacation from college. One night they are staying alone in a cabin near the beach. They decide it would be interesting and fun if they tried making love. At the very least, it would be a new experience for each of them. Julie was already taking birth control pills, but Mark uses a condom too, just to be safe. They both enjoy making love, but they decide never to do it again. They decide to keep that night as a special secret, which makes them feel even closer to each other. What do you think about that? Was it okay for them to make love? So go ahead, pause the video, think about what your answer would be, give it some consideration before you continue the video. All right, so did you actually stop? Did you think about it? I hope so. So let's talk about some of the typical reactions that people have to this little vignette. So the typical reactions are, no, it was not okay what they did. It was morally wrong. And when asked for justifications, people typically come along with justifications like, she could have gotten pregnant. But the thought experiment already assumes that that can't be the case. Or they'll say things like, it's illegal. Well, actually in France, it's not illegal. It's fine. Or people will say things like, oh, that's disgusting. Well, do you really want to condemn somebody for doing something that you find disgusting but that they enjoyed? Probably not so much. So the thought experiment is very clever in the sense that it anticipates most of the reactions that people will have and sort of cuts them off. And so that's the thought experiment. So what's the point of all this? Well, the point of all of this is that the way that we think about moral problems, the way we probably think we think about it, is we evaluate the reasons, we sift through the evidence, and then we come to a moral conclusion. But the evidence is that it's exactly the opposite, that in fact we have the moral conclusion almost instantly, and then only later do we grope for the reasons for why the things we think are true are actually true. And people in this thought experiment find themselves in a situation of cognitive dissonance, where on the one hand, they're sure that something they think is wrong because we have a lot of faith in our moral intuition, but at the same time they understand that the reasons and the evidence line up against them, which only serves sort of to make them angrier, which is sort of a surprising result. You might intuitively expect that when the reasons line up against your train of thought, you might feel less strongly about something, but in fact, people sometimes react by feeling even more strongly than they felt before. So, bringing this all back to invasions, what does this all tell us? Well, what I think it tells us is that people are actually having a moral reaction to invasions. It's not just that they think invasions are annoying or they don't like them. There's a special sauce here, and that special sauce is they feel that you are morally wrong when you invade somebody. And this is why they get so angry. This is why no matter what sort of reasoning you try to offer, people only get increasingly angry. They're engaging their moral part of the brain. And I think part of the reason here is because these are called invasions. And people tend to think of these and model them in their brain as actual invasions, where you are coming into somebody's world without their permission. Of course, nothing could be further from the truth. These are not actual invasions. These are only, they're invasions by name only. They're invasions from a lore perspective. From just as easily could have called these like asymmetric PvP sessions, because that's really what they are. But by calling them invasions, it triggers that moral reasoning part of people's brains and sometimes gets them to be very angry. So I think why people dislike invasions is the loss of status. They don't like competing when they know they're likely to lose. That's all true. However, the anger is coming from a different place. That's coming, I believe, from the moral reasoning center of people's brains. So what do we do about this? Frankly, I don't think there is anything that can be done. I think people are just going to react the way that they react. I don't think you can change anyone's mind about it. God knows I've tried over the last 3 or 4 years. I doubt I've had very much success, so I've pretty much given up trying. But I thought for people who like invasions, hopefully this is maybe a window into how other people are thinking about them, and maybe you find it interesting or useful. So thanks for watching, guys. Take care.